appears to be clear for Russia and Iran to push their agendas in Syria, which in the near term certainly include keeping Bashar al-Assad's regime in power.
NPR's Peter Kenyon is in Turkey near the Syrian border. NPR's Daniel Estring is in Syria near the Turkish border. Thank you guys both so much.
Thanks, Lola.
Congress returns this week from a 2-week break. During that time, freshman Democrats, newly elected in 2018, Democrats who helped tip the House in favor of an impeachment inquiry, have been at home meeting with constituents. NPR congressional correspondent Susan Davis reports on the political risks they're taking.
Michigan Democrat Alyssa Slotkin is one of the 31 freshman lawmakers who represent a district Donald Trump won. So when she tried to push back at a recent town hall on a constituent who said the president has done nothing wrong, it didn't go over great. Foreign leaders help each other all the time.
I'm sorry, ma'am. They help Biden.
And it went on and on like this.
She's our representative and we want answers!
Slotkin says she hopes the totality of her record and her background as a CIA analyst will keep her district behind her in the next election.
Hopefully, they have gotten to know me enough as a representative to trust that I didn't do this because it was some political thing for me.
In recent weeks, national polls show a growing number of Americans support the impeachment inquiry. That includes independents who sided with these Democrats in the last election. But in the microcosms of the most competitive House races, the decision to support the inquiry still brings a high level of political risk.
The political environment in those districts, in those swing districts that Democrats hold on to, but that could swing the House, is really not leaning toward Democrats right now at all, but leaning away from them and leaning to Republicans.
That's Neil Newhouse, a veteran Republican pollster. He recently conducted polling focused on just 95 congressional districts for the House Republican campaign operation. His data shows in those districts, just 37% of voters believe the president's actions warrant impeachment, and voters generally favor an anti-impeachment Republican over a pro-impeachment Democrat.
The more these guys go on the record, the more it's going to hurt them in the 20 election.
But instead of shying away from this political risk, most freshman Democrats are embracing it. Iowa Democratic Congresswoman Cindy Axie had this exchange with a reporter after one of her town halls in Creston.
And you're willing to keep going down that path, even if it gets to a point where it may cost you your seat?
Yes. If it's the right thing to do, I will always do the right thing.
Another Democratic freshman, Max Rose of New York, had this message for his Staten Island district that Trump won by 10 points.
So while the President of the United States may be willing to violate the Constitution to get reelected, I will not.
Not all freshmen have been as brazen in their support. Utah Democrat Ben McAdams was one of the last holdouts on the impeachment inquiry. He announced over the recess that he now supports it, but he was quick to caution that doesn't guarantee he will support articles of impeachment if they come to the floor.
For myself, I pledge to remain objective and will reserve final judgment until that process concludes.
Freshman Democrats like Pennsylvania's Susan Wild say you can't help but think of the consequences of embracing impeachment when you represent a swing seat.
I do consider the fact that I'm in a very purple district. I know that is finally fixing a dam that has languished in disrepair for years. And the move follows a recent story by Caitlin McGlade with the Kentucky Center for Investigative Reporting that revealed the structure's troublesome records. You can read more about this story online this morning by visiting our website at WFPL.org. Good morning, it's Morning Edition and it's 7:20.
On the next Fresh Air, Elton John returns to talk to Terry about his new memoir. It's pretty forthcoming about family, addiction, and sexuality. And so is their conversation. Join us.
Today at noon on 89.3 WFPL.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from C3.ai. C3.ai software enables organizations to use artificial intelligence at enterprise scale, solving previously unsolvable business problems. Learn more at C3.ai. From Capital One, offering the Spark cash card for businesses, committed to helping business owners turn purchases into meaningful investments that can help drive business forward. Capital One, what's in your wallet? More at CapitalOne.com. And from Campaign Monitor, an email marketing platform with a drag-and-drop email builder and mobile-ready templates, used by more than 250,000 customers. At CampaignMonitor.com. Campaign Monitor, make your emails unforgettable.
It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Noel King.
And I'm Steve Inskeep. Almost half of all children who develop type 1 diabetes do not learn they even have the disease until they end up in the hospital. Researchers are exploring whether a genetic test can eliminate a lot of these emergencies, which is tricky because the test raises a lot of false alarms and misses a lot of cases. NPR science correspondent Richard Harris visited a research team in Charlottesville, Virginia, where they are trying out the test.
Sharon Twitty and her daughter Tiara are in the sun-filled waiting room of a health clinic at the University of Virginia when a man with a computer tablet politely approaches.
Good morning. So my name is Mourning. I'm a clinical research study coordinator here at UVA. We're conducting a genetic risk study for type 1 diabetes.
Gonzalez explains that the study is recruiting kids to identify those at elevated risk for this condition. Sharon and her daughter quickly agreed to take part.
Great. So if you can follow me, we're going to go to the very first room.
They head back behind the nursing station.
Are you familiar with consent forms? Yes.
Paperwork quickly out of the way. It's now 16-year-old Tiara's turn to provide a saliva sample for the study.
It helps to make a fishy face like this. You bring the saliva right out to the middle. I have a gum in my mouth to the right.
Out it comes. Tiara is game to give a spit sample, but she says her mouth is too dry.
It is a bit sacra. You're doing great.
Gonzalez ultimately collects the spit on cotton swabs. It's all over in a few minutes. You've done your bit for science. Congratulations. So far, Gonzalez and his colleagues working in other clinics have collected about 2,000 spit samples. Those go to a lab where DNA is extracted for an unusual genetic test. Steve Rich, director of the UVA Center for Public Health Genomics, explains the strategy.
The risk of type 1 diabetes is about half genetic and half unknown.
And unlike most genetic conditions, there's no single gene responsible for that genetic risk. Over the years, scientists have discovered dozens of gene variations that each contribute a tiny amount to the risk. The test Rich developed costs only about $7. It looks at all those variants and together explains about 90% of the genetic risk. Most genetic tests of this type do far worse.
In a complex disease like type 1 diabetes, we're probably unique in that we actually understand the vast majority of the genetic risk.
The question is what to do with that information.
It's an autoimmune disease, so there is no exercise more, there is no stop eating sugar, there is no have a better diet that we know that will actually affect things.
But what they can do for kids who have this genetic risk is run a blood test. Before symptoms kick in, children develop antibodies in the blood. Rich says parents and doctors can then use that information to make sure the first sign of trouble isn't a scary crash in blood sugar.
And since 40% of kids who get type 1 diabetes go into this coma, we can prevent that by monitoring them carefully.
Out of the 2,000 kids tested in this study, about 60 turned out to carry this higher genetic risk. Charlottesville resident Jerry Seidman says her 12-year-old daughter Hannah is one of
Championship Series is tonight in Washington between the Nationals and the St. Louis Cardinals. Washington leads the series 2-0. The American League Championship Series is tied at a game apiece after the Houston Astros beat the New York Yankees last night 3-2 in 11 innings. I'm Dave Mattingly, NPR News in Washington. You are listening to Morning Edition on 89.3 WFPL. Hemp, it's still a risky crop with uncertainty about markets and growing practices, but the first hemp harvest since hemp was legalized was a boom to some. Liam Niemeyer from the Ohio Valley Resource will tell us more about it coming up at 7:45.
When's the last time you asked a teenager what's important to them?
You just can go out in the backyard and tend to your plants, pull weeds. It's a great time to think.
When you watch a piece of art, it forces you to look deeper.
People should just see us as people who contribute to society, not as something to be here.
This year, we're bringing you the voices and stories of young people in our community. It's the next Louisville, from the Community Foundation of Louisville and 89.3 WFPL.
Sunshine in lower 70s for us today, and then mostly sunny and up into the mid 70s for a high on Tuesday.
explained that the channel that was apparently opened by Ambassador Sondland and Rudy Giuliani, these were things that were going on outside of the purview of the National Security Council.
And Sam says Hill's main aim while she was on the NSC was to stay out of the limelight and make sure, as she put it, that worse things won't happen when it comes to Russia and Ukraine.
Okay, David, thanks so much for the update. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Steve.
That's NPR National Security Correspondent David Wellna talking with us on This Morning. Did we expect testimony from Fiona Hill, former National Security Council aide?
Early Saturday morning, a white Fort Worth police officer shot and killed a black woman inside of her home. It's the 6th deadly police shooting in Fort Worth, Texas since June. Bill Ziebel with member station KERA in Dallas reports that many people in Fort Worth are demanding justice for 28-year-old Tatiana Jefferson. And just a quick word of warning, the sound of that fatal gunshot can be heard in this story.
A Sunday vigil outside the home where Tatiana Jefferson was shot featured a now familiar refrain. Early Saturday at 2:23 a.m., police say one of Jefferson's neighbors called the Fort Worth police using a non-emergency number. The neighbor was worried because lights were on at the house and the door was open. 2 officers were sent over. The police body cam video shows an officer with flashlight and gun in hand, slowly walking around the house. We see the lights on and the open door. We never hear the officer announce his presence or talk to anyone inside until he sees something in the window.
Put your hands up! Show me your hands!
Police say a gun was found in the house, but it's unclear if the victim was holding it when she was shot. Attorney Lee Merritt, retained to represent the family of Ms. Jefferson, says she was playing with her 8-year-old nephew, whom she was taking care of.
That 8-year-old said he and his auntie were playing video games when they heard someone creeping around outside. She went to investigate at the window. An officer was on the other side, shot at the man before she had a moment to respond, shot her to death. That's murder.
Merritt has recently represented the family of both of Jean and Dallas. Jean's killer is fired Dallas police officer Amber Geiger. She was found guilty of murder and sentenced to 10 years for killing Jean in his own apartment. Geiger said she mistook his place for hers. In Fort Worth, police say they're still investigating this shooting. They've yet to answer many questions, including was Jefferson holding the gun that was later found in the house. For now, the officer's name is being withheld. We only know he's been on the police force since April of 2018. Lieutenant Brandon O'Neill read this comment to reporters.
The tragic loss of life has major ramifications for all involved, especially the family of Miss Tatiana Jefferson. We have communicated with the family and shared our serious and heartfelt concern for this unspeakable loss.
Community activists like Pamela Young say enough is enough. She's lead organizer for United Fort Worth Criminal Justice Action Team.
This officer needs to be fired immediately, and he needs to be arrested and criminally charged with murder. And there needs to be a thorough investigation, and that's going to have to be from an outside agency.
Sunday evening, Fort Worth Mayor Betsy Price said the city will hire an outside party to investigate this shooting. She didn't say when that might happen or who would be hired. I'm Bill Ziebel in Fort Worth.
Listening to Morning Edition on 89.3 WFPL. Bill Bryson is loved for travel writing, but this time around, he's taking a different kind of journey. He's not going to Australia or Europe.
That incident there is
taking a journey inside the body. People talk with Bryson about his new book called The Body, coming up at 7:51.
Support for 89.3 WFPL.
The officers completely wrong. I don't see anybody. That was a logical way to handle the situation. I see a person inside the house. Hands up. Bang. 2 seconds. 2 seconds from the moment he said that. All this.
November 21st at 5:30 p.m.
It's not enough time for anybody to gauge the situation and react. I'd like to know why the officer felt threatened enough to shoot suddenly.
lives.
Was there sudden movement?
Right now,
if you
it's
walk up to my
51,
house and I
and
wasn't
Bill
expecting
Burton
you
took a look
to yell
at these
at me,
headlines.
I get freaked
Governor
out.
Matt
Like,
Bevin held a press
turn
conference
around
to
suddenly,
remind
like, what the
voters that he opposes
fuck's
abortion
going on?
and has signed several anti-abortion bills into law. Also, today marks the annual celebration of Indigenous people.
Whatevs.
We'll tell you more about both of those stories coming up.